I'm here. Just come. Just come. No, I told you. Just
Hey, you ask me if there's anything to do that.
He's a man with a gavel. And these committees, the man with the gavel with the gavel.
Oh,
Yeah.
the man with the gavel has the power.
Okay. I'm okay, my grandmother. All one day. Well, it's we'll start our meeting with Forestry, and that's all roll, please.
Representative Thomas? Here. Representative Burns? Representative Jackson? Here. Representative Williams?
Here.
Representative Gracie?
Here.
Representative Scott? Representative Bishop? Here. Representative Mitchell?
here.
Representative Hammond?
Here.
Representative Joyner? Representative Kennedy? Representative Oliver? Representative Smith?
Here.
Representative Sanders?
Here.
Representative
Here. We'll ask the sponsor, Harrison, to come and talk to us about HB 448. That's the only bill we have on the agenda today. And you could explain the amendment for the other hearing people to know what your intention is.
Okay. I'll just start off with a few statements. Many of you remember the times when Mark Logo had a squirrel and his raccoon confiscated, and York Fish and Wildlife euthanized it in itself, a car storm. When I researched the reasons that all came to be, he found it when his mother was killed after being hit by a car, and he took it home, and he tried to find somebody to take care of it. He couldn't find somebody to take care of it, so he put it in a bottle, and he came to raise it and became a pet. Now, this bill has nothing to do with permitting wildlife to raise as a pet, okay? But what this, it doesn't advocate in any way or encourage the keeping of wildlife. It does address the issue of dwindling number of licensed rehabbers in the state of Alabama. Because we got the same situation. We've only had, we had just like over 100, 15 years ago, it's dwindled down to 7. And people have to take these animals a long ways to get help. I've heard that now, here's the thing. 2015, I was only able to get data for conservation from 2015 to the present. It was, the high was in like 2016, like 50, but it has really dropped off dramatically in the last few years. And the reason that is, that I've been told, is in 2013, there was a edict that went out that said that the RSV species, the rabies vector species, that no matter how healthy it was, even if it didn't have rabies, that if one got injured, you had to euthanize it. And so after that time, the number of rehabbers has dropped off. What this bill does, this allows an individual in good faith to provide care and treatment to sustain life to an injured animal without a permit, so long as the wild bird or animal is not a federally protected species. What this bill does not do, it does not authorize a person to engage in veterinary medicine, in the practice of veterinary medicine, and it does not exempt an individual from the crime of cruelty to animals. And so what's happened since then, a lot of them have been afraid of conservation, of being, their animals being confiscated and euthanized. And that's in my opinion, and in the comments that I've seen from the rehabbers, that's the reason the number has dropped off. And what this bill will allow, it will allow one to humanely treat an injured animal on their own property. So and they've got stories to tell, and we'll just let the public tell them. And then I'll come back up and answer any questions.
Okay, tell them about what your amendment.
Okay, the amendment, I'll go ahead and do that. All right, it's a reporting requirements, and it also, the individual shall provide to the Wildlife and Freshwater Fisheries Division, the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, the date on when the care or treatment begins and when it ends. And the length of care of the treatment of the wild bird may not exceed 6 months. Okay, it doesn't go on forever. You got to do it within 6 months, and then release it. And then a wild bird or animal shall be returned to the general area where it was collected upon release. Okay. And you got to report that. And then wildlife, as far as the reporting stuff, wildlife can adopt rules and ways and methods of reporting.
So we'll start our public hearing and we'll bring back up questions, and if you have questions for some of the speakers at the end, just ask some questions. We have 12. So we'll do 2.5 minutes. So as we're making points, we might consider making different points if you like. We'll start out with Stephanie Cabinets.
Cabinets.
Well, thank you for letting me speak today. I'm Stephanie, and I have dedicated over 20 years of my life to the profession of wildlife rehabilitation. I have held state permits and federal permits in other states, including Alabama. I have a master's degree in natural resources. I'm a certified wildlife rehabilitator and a certified euthanasia technician. I stand before you to express my concerns regarding this bill. While the intention of this bill may be noble and address need for more wildlife rehabilitators in Alabama, it overlooks several critical aspects that can have detrimental effects on wildlife as well as the humans that are caring for them. I've spent decades rehabilitating injured and orphaned wildlife, and this includes migratory birds, mammals, reptiles, and amphibians. I can attest to the complexities and challenges involved in this work. Wildlife rehabilitation is not merely about providing food and shelter. It requires specialized knowledge, skills, and resources to ensure these animals have appropriate care and can successfully be returned to their natural habitats. This bill allows individuals without proper training or permits to care for injured orphan wildlife. This possesses a significant risk to the animals in their care, as well-meaning individuals may inadvertently cause more harm than good, as I've seen over my 20 years in this field. They may also spread disease once they release these animals into naive populations, and they also can provide issues to humans with diseases that these animals can carry. We do undergo rigorous training and continuing education as a wildlife rehabilitator, and the general public doesn't have that, right? And without these safeguards, there's real danger that improper handling, adequate nutrition, exposure to diseases can lead to suffering and even death for these animals and public health concerns for the humans. Secondly, this bill fails to address the importance of veterinary care and wildlife rehabilitation. A majority, upward of over 75% of what comes into a rehabilitation center requires some sort of medical attention. That is why they are coming into rehab. And by allowing these untrained individuals to care for these animals, we risk denying them the critical medical treatment they need, which not only jeopardizes the health and recovery of these animals, but also undermines the professional standards that have been established in the field by the International Wildlife Rehabilitation Council and the National Wildlife Rehabilitation Association. This bill also does not consider...
That's your 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Brian Travis.
My name is Brian Travis, for 30 years wildlife conservation and college student. I'm here today for extra support with this American law common sense bill that allows people to help injured or orphaned wildlife, including rabies vector species like raccoons, foxes, goats, and bats, without fear of legal punishment. This bill is not about red tape, it's not about bureaucracy, it's about compassion, responsibility, and basic belief that if you see a life suffering, you should be allowed to help it. One of the biggest fears surrounding this species is rabies, but let's take a look. In Alabama, only 38 cases of rabies were confirmed in all wildlife in 2021. That's a 33% decrease from 57 cases in 2018. I don't have 25. According to the CDC, fewer than 1 in 3 people in the U.S. die each year from rabies. Most from unvaccinated dog bites brought not wildlife to their home. The chance of human getting rabies from casual exposure and helping wildlife with basic precautions is extremely low, less than 1 in several million. Other states are doing their work. In New York, more than 67% of orphan raccoon homes helped by citizens and wildlife centers were successfully released back into the wild. In North Carolina, Virginia, and Florida, good people are allowed to help wildlife, including RBS, and it has not led to increased rabies risk or public health issues. Hunters versus helpers. Let's be honest, hunters and their dogs often come in direct contact with wild animals, sometimes while those animals are still alive and struggling. They are not criminalized for that, and no one is demanding they stop. So how is it more dangerous for someone who's trying to save or something in life than someone pursuing? We don't prosecute hunters, we shouldn't, why should we prosecute helpers? And the Bible even says that we should support helping animals. Helping wildlife is not just a moral act, it's a biblical one. Proverbs 12:10, the righteous care for the needs of their animals. The righteous care for the needs of their animals. Deuteronomy 22:4. If you see your neighbor's donkey or ox falling on the road, do not ignore it. Help him get it to its feet. Conclusion, time is now. The Good Samaritan law gives Alabama citizens the freedom to act with compassion. It recognizes that wildlife are not just pests or problems, they're part of our ecosystem, part of our culture, and in many ways, part of our spiritual responsibility.
Kimberly football. Close.
It was very close, actually. Good afternoon. I am here today to express my deep concern regarding the proposed bill. I'm a veterinarian and I work full-time at a wildlife rehabilitation center focusing on Forestry. While I understand the intent to provide aid to animals in need, this bill is currently written poses serious risks both to the animals it seeks to help and to public health. Every day I take calls from people who have found an injured animal and want to find some way to help. We know how desperate the need is for more care. What we also know is that bad things often happen when well-meaning people decide to take on the role of rehabilitator with no knowledge of treatment. Feeding young animals the wrong diet, even just for a few days, can cause broken bones and permanent disability. Those animals will suffer needlessly and will not survive if released back to the wild. I've seen tourniquets applied to wounds so tight the limbs fall off. I've seen wounds full of maggots allowed to fester for weeks until the animal becomes septic. I've seen animals come in with rusty pipes duct taped to their broken limbs. I've seen animals given fatally toxic doses of human medications to try to treat their ailments. This happens all the time with people who are just trying to help, and it's the animals who suffer. Part of my duty as a veterinarian is to be a protector of public health. My fear is that a well-meaning person may bring a sick wild animal into their home and wind up infecting their beloved pets or even their children with a deadly virus, bacterial infection, or parasite. and you'd be able to justify this bill when that happens. Zoonotic infections are those that can pass from animals to people, and here are just a few of those found in wild animals in North America. Raccoon roundworm larvae that migrate into the brain and eyes of people, avian influenza, rabies virus, hantavirus, fungal infections like ringworm, bacterial infections like tuberculosis, leprosy, salmonella, and the bubonic plague. This bill expressly prohibits the practice of veterinary by the Good Samaritan, but in my experience, the percentage of animals that can be successfully rehabilitated without the use of veterinary medicine is extremely small. The most common reason the birds are brought to our facility is because they were hit by cars. If you were hit by a truck that weighed 3,000 times as much as you, do you think you'd be okay if someone just took you into your home and gave you food and water for a few days? Probably not, and betting you'd want to go last. We can all agree that Alabama's wild animals need our help, but the solution is not to allow people to care for wildlife in their homes with no training or oversight. I urge you to consider alternative measures, such as expanding resources and support for licensed wildlife rehabilitators and for those who wish to become licensed.
Where do you work?
I prefer not to say thank you.
Abigail,
My name is Abigail Wilkins. I'm a former volunteer at a wildlife rehab center. I volunteered at Big Bend, which is just outside my hometown of Enterprise, Alabama. My family found Big Bend in 2013. At the time, I was 12. My childhood dog actually got a hold of a squirrel. And as a 12-year-old, that was horrible. Worst thing I'd seen. And my mother, being a good Samaritan, was Googling what to do when you find, a squirrel. She came across Big Bend, we took that squirrel and they were able to treat it. And it was because of that that we became long-term volunteers. So, over the years that I volunteered at Big Bend, I saw thousands of animals come through their care, migratory birds, endangered reptiles, amphibians, mammals, you name it, from a number of avoidable, mostly human-driven incidents. But what stood out to me more than the animals that were in their care were the people that brought them to this rehab center. These were all good-meaning Samaritans that found an animal in need and wanted to help it. And we were lucky that we had a place to take it. Big Bend was that place. And unfortunately, most people don't have that. Big Bend closed in 2021, just like many of the Alabama rehab centers, and that's left a giant hole in our community. This makes it so that people are not able to take these animals anywhere. So now when a mother has a baby squirrel that gets caught by a dog, she's told to just leave it alone and let nature take its course. And for me, that would have been horrible as a 12-year-old. That's why we need this bill, to empower Alabamians who care with the right to help their wildlife. I've spent my life working with wildlife. I started volunteering at the age of 12. My time at Big Bend encouraged me to pursue my bachelor's in wildlife ecology and management from Auburn. I later went on and I'm actually getting my master's in biology next week. And still, I cannot legally help an animal in need. That is what we're asking for. Wildlife is a public resource, and if that's the case, why can the public not help protect an animal in need? If these animals need help and there's nowhere to take them, and the alternate is to let nature take its course, they're going to die anyway. Thank you for your time.
Chief Weathers?
Thank you for letting me speak today. My name is Matt Weathers. I'm the law enforcement section chief of Wildlife Freshwater Fisheries. I've been employed with our department for around 26 years. When I first came to work, there was no oversight. Rehabilitation in Alabama was just a patchwork quilt. There was people out there with no guidance, and animals were being taken in of all manner. It was common for us to get calls for people who had coyotes in their possession, deer, pretty much name it. As you fast forward 25 years, we have a program now. In the days when I first came to work, it was very common for Alabamians to be injured by animals that they were attempting to give care for. In Alabama, we've had multiple people killed by deer that either were in their possession or escaped their possession. We really don't want to see a return to that. It does take expertise in veterinary medicine, as is already been described here, to be able to give any effective care. The layman is going to have a very hard time doing that. People can pick these animals up now. The Good Samaritan portion of this bill, they can pick these animals up today and they can deliver them to wildlife rehabbers. We don't arrest people for doing this. Now, what we discourage is coming in contact with rabies, vector species, or taking these things home around your children and your family. You know, if you want to pick those animals up and get them to the veterinarian or to a licensed rehabber, we encourage that. That's entirely fine. We do licensed rehabbers. We have a process where we didn't when I first went to work. It's a fairly simple process. And I'd like to just explain those steps to you so that we understand that there is a process to do what's being asked for today already. You've got to be 19 years of age. It's basically a 7-step process. You've got to be 19, have a current tetanus vaccination. You've got to have enclosures that are appropriate by the guidelines of the National Wildlife Rehabilitators Association and the International Rehabilitators Association. Those facilities, those enclosures must be detached from your home. It was common for us when we started doing inspections, which is the reason that the number of wildlife rehabbers dropped off around 17 or 18. It's because we didn't do inspections prior to that. We started verifying that their enclosures were what they said they were. We found that they were not. And a good number of those rehabbers dropped off because they didn't have appropriate facilities. What we found was deer being rehabbed, coyotes being rehabbed, that sort of thing, in kitchens and living rooms, around children, around other people that live next to their homes. We don't want to see a return to that.
You said when you had 100 and whatever it was, they all did veterinarian services to us.
No, these were just labeled by and large. They were just labeled Good Samaritans.
On a permit process, and you did the checkoff, and then you approved them. Did they have to have some veterinarian skills? You said
They have
essentially
there's a test that we have to increase husbandry of the animals, and they have to have a contact, recommendation by a licensed veterinarian. Essentially, they're telling us that we have some skill, and then we have someone, if this is above our abilities, who we can go to who will assist. That's it in a nutshell. So, as I said, I think the car hitting the bird is a really good analogy. Most of these animals, if they're going to survive, it's going to take a licensed veterinarian. I've worked with wildlife my entire life, and I couldn't do it.
I've got a question. Where are the rehabilitation facilities located still in operation?
We have just a handful around the state. Marianne can provide a map if that would be good in names and locations. You know, we encourage people to take the test, and I think in the last 10 years we only denied one person. We just don't have people taking the test, and I would encourage to ask the people who speak today, have you applied? Have you taken the test? Have you come to be a rehabber? We encourage people to become rehabbers. We just don't have a lot of folks seeking that process.
What's approximately what does it cost to rehab to the license?
$75.
$75, and then of course we've got one of the facilities that has to develop, and could be more, but
It could be. Generally, they've got to have facilities. The biggest thing that we hear is the detached facilities. It's got to have separate power and water. What we mean, literally, is just not in your house. It could be a shop.
a hose pipe and
A hose pipe or
cord.
extension cord. We just don't want to see deer or squirrels or whatever around children. When we started to inspect, that's what we found. These were being rehab kitchens. And it was an awful situation all the way around, and dangerous.
Family addicts.
As a previously licensed rehabber, I can personally say that I did not have a good experience. I started contacting Hudson back in 2019 to get my permit. It took me until February 2021 to get a response from my request by email. My permit application was sent on February 13, 2021, and I finally received my permit in July. I requested all small animals, including RBS, My enclosures were built to the WWF raccoon sizes, and I have my pre-exposure vaccine, but I was told no due to health concerns and diseases. I have been rehabbing over 35 years. When I got my first squirrel at Auburn, I received my degree in animal science and wildlife sciences. I subbed under Dr. Robert Leshak for 4 years. I received my first permit back in 1996, and the laws were completely different back then. Years after I moved to Dothan, I also started helping Big Ben, and I learned about various species. Big Ben waited to shut their doors down until another license was given in my area. An overabundance of calls that I received in this first year was unreal. I was the only person south of Montgomery until Mobile who had a permit, and the stress was surreal. In 2023, several changes were added to receive a permit. In 2 years, after spending over $5K to build my enclosures, one person decided more regulations were added. I could do it if I chose. I have a separate building with running water and electricity, but why should I continue to do animals that were not what I wanted to specialize in? Why use my money, resources, and time on something that didn't interest me as much? So I gave it up, and now I decided to fight for the voiceless, and that is what I'm doing today. Is this bill perfect? No, but it's a great start. Past rehabbers should start teaching subs to learn the correct procedures to rehab different species, inspections to make sure everything is up to code, and RVS rehabbers should be required to receive their pre-exposure vaccine. There have been many people who have reached out to me who want to learn, who want their license. But I tell everybody that there is no point in trying. It took me 2.5 years to receive mine, and there has not been another one issued to an individual since then, and that has been 4 years. In Alabama, the number of wildlife rabies cases has decreased by 3.5%.
Okay, Chris, thanks.
My name is Chris Sykes. I serve as the Executive Director of the Alabama Wildlife Center, the state's oldest and largest wildlife rehabilitation facility. Today I'm here to respectfully ask you all to vote no on this bill. Because while we support helping wildlife, this bill removes critical safeguards, threatens public safety, and dismantles a system that's already working. If someone wants to become a wildlife rehabilitator in Alabama today, they can. The problem isn't lack of opportunity, it's the lack of applications, and more often a lack of willingness to follow a process designed to protect people and animals alike. I reached out to Wildlife Freshwater Fisheries, and there's been, in the last 10 years, 240 permits issued. And there's only been one denied, and that was due to violations from the federal government. The idea that Alabamians are blocked from helping wildlife is simply not true. What this bill would do is remove the basic protections that make wildlife rehabilitation safe, ethical, and effective, and it would open the door to serious harm. Wildlife rehabilitation involves handling animals that carry fatal diseases. Without training, oversight, and well-meaning individuals, they can expose themselves, their children, their pets, the entire community. It's a real threat. It's not through just direct contact, it's through spreading into other areas that maybe not even being to spread. It's not just about diseases. If properly raised, habituated animals, foxes and bobcats, can become aggressive and dangerous. When released, these animals may seek out people instead of avoiding them. Imagine an animal entering a backyard and the child's playing and the child gets mauled. True wildlife rehabilitation means more than good intentions. It requires skill, resources, veterinarian partnerships, and access to appropriate medicine. Some of those are controlled substances. You have to have a permit to get some of that medication. Without structure, animals suffer. Without oversight, people get hurt. Wildlife rehabilitation is serious work. It deserves serious, thoughtful management, not elimination of safeguard under the banner of compassion. Alabama's current system protects both people and wildlife through reasonable, science-based oversight. This bill would tear that down and leave citizens, communities, and native species exposed to preventable harm.
Thank you. One question. Sure. It went from 200 to 7. Why do you think?
In my opinion, it's very costly. So there's a lot of resources. So as a nonprofit, we're the oldest and the largest in the state. It costs us, just on the clinic side, $250,000 to treat 1,500 birds. We used to do animals also, and that was a lot of resources. So you have the lack of resources, because if you're not a nonprofit, you're an individual, you're going to have to front that money yourself. So if you are a nonprofit, you can get grant funding, you can get public support, public dollars, all that good stuff. And then compassion fatigue. 70% of these animals, you know, they need to be euthanized. They come in with serious injuries, and if you're euthanizing these animals, compassion fatigue is real for you. And so after years and years, that's my, you know, if I had to think why there's not as many cappers, it's because compassion fatigue and resources.
David Fields.
Representatives. My name is Dave Fields. I stand before you as a passionate advocate for wildlife rehabilitation. As a voice for the many Alabamians, both human and animal, who have been left behind by a broken system, I urge you to support House Bill 448. For decades, Alabama Game and Fisheries, along with Alabama Wildlife Center, held near total control over wildlife rehabilitation. And in all that time, they have failed to expand, access, build infrastructure, or form partnership with the many capable, compassionate citizens eager to help. Today, we have fewer than 6 licensed rehabbers statewide, 6 for an entire state. That is not a functioning system. That's a gate kept shut. This monopolization, intentional or not, has left good-hearted Alabamians in an impossible position. Show compassion and break the law, or obey the law and ignore suffering. Why must we choose? HB 448 doesn't dismantle an institution, it builds capacity. It brings responsible rehab efforts out of the shadows and into the light through proper training, oversight, and accountability. It allows the many citizens already stepping in to help do so legally, safely, and with state support. Those opposing this bill have had decades to build a system that works. They haven't. So the question must be asked, why stand in the way now? Alabama currently ranks 48th in the country for wildlife welfare. But we don't have to stay there. HB 44 is a chance to change history, to lead with compassion, and become a frontier state for humane, forward-thinking wildlife care. This bill has the power to shape not just policy, but legacy. It also strengthens public health by creating an open educational network, allows for the evaluation and vaccination of rabies vector species before they release. This isn't about keeping wild animals or pets, it's about getting injured or orphan animals the care they need and returning them to wildlife healthy and ready to thrive. I gotta say something. Just talking to my friends that are hunters, fishers, in the last 3 weeks about this. 2 of my friends are fishers, 3 of them are hunters. And I will tell you, everybody's got a story about some animal they rescued, some uncle or something. And when I tell them, I say, hey, you know, you're breaking the law, it's been kind of a comical joke with this because nobody's gonna stop. People are going to keep rescuing animals. I don't care if it's the farmer that ran over the deer and throws it in the back of his truck and brings it to somebody. People are going to keep doing it. I'm not saying I would do it. I'm saying it because I don't want anybody who's in the room to come after me. But the fact is it's not going to happen. I have a friend who's got tells a story about his uncle being chased out of his house after the raccoon got better. It's a comical story. Everybody's got these stories in it. So,
one question.
Sure.
How would people get proper training?
Did I refer that to one of the people in the back smarter than me?
Well, are you a rehabber?
Have I rescued plenty of animals? A lot. Since I was a kid. Sir?
Do you have proper training?
You know, I don't know what this entails as proper training. An animal that's hurt in the wild just needs somewhere to sit, rest, a warm blanket, some food. Once it's better, you release it. I don't know what this means where I have to have a 4-year degree or a veterinarian license to show a little compassion. You know, it just doesn't make sense to me. And the people are doing it anyway. I will tell you something. Across Alabama, every Sunday, people are meeting in Walmarts, transporting animals from this place to this place across the state. They do it every weekend. And everybody walks in, they're kind of scared. They're like, who are you with? I mean, it's like this underground railroad across the state. It really happens, and nobody's going to stop it. But they're very careful about what they say. Who is that? Hey, I don't know that person. That.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Thank you.
Too much information. George Bartani.
Hi, my name is Victoria Partain, and I serve as the Director of Education at the Alabama Wildlife Center. In this role, I work with thousands of students, families, and educators every year teaching about wildlife, conservation, and the critical role humans play in protecting native species. Today, I'm speaking in opposition to this bill. Education and conservation go hand in hand. When we teach people about wildlife, we teach them how to respect it, not tame it. But this bill, even if well-intentioned, blurs that line. It opens the door to widespread handling and keeping of wild animals by individuals who may not fully understand the consequences of their actions. One of the biggest concerns we see in our work is imprinting. When a wild animal is raised by a human without proper training or protocols, it becomes imprinted, meaning the animal loses its natural fear of people and can no longer survive in the wild. At that point, it is non-releasable and is permanently dependent on human care. These animals live long lives in captivity. They can't be set free. They can't live as they were meant to be, and in some cases, they become dangerous. Because when wildlife associates people with discomfort, it can lead to aggression, property damage, or attacks. As an educator, I want students to grow up understanding that wildlife is not something to own, it's something to respect, learn from, and protect. But this bill is sending the wrong message. It tells the public that care is about compassion, not training. That everyone can step in and raise a wild animal even without guidance, knowledge, or oversight. We do need more people helping wildlife in Alabama, but the answer is not to remove every barrier. The answer is to build better support around the systems we already have and invest in making it stronger. There are many solutions that would help Alabama's wildlife, but this is not one of them. It would create more suffering, not less, more confusion, not clarity, and more animals permanently removed from the wild, not successfully returned to it. For the sake of our wildlife and the people who want to help it the right way, I respectfully urge you to vote no, and instead pursue real, thoughtful solutions that preserve public safety, support recappers, and protect the animals we all care about. Thank you.
Lindsay Wilmer, is that the last name?
You got it.
All
Thank you. Right now in Alabama, a fox kid sleeps in bed with the woman who rescued her. Not out of carelessness, but because she simply doesn't know the risk. Baby raccoons are being passed around into daycare, not out of indifference, but because the adults believe they were healthy. A coyote pup was with a crushed pelvis, lives in a dark closet, not from malice, but because his caregiver, acting with kindness, has no access to veterinary care and no legal way to get help. After more than 20 years of working with wildlife in various capacities, I can say with absolute certainty that we are living in the dark ages of wildlife rehabilitation in Alabama. A shadow system has taken root, an underground world of wildlife care born not from cruelty but from compassion starved of support. And it's growing. With no legal way to help, people are doing what they can in secret. This world is bleak and it's heartbreaking. There are no education pathways, just desperate Google searches. There is no guidance, no mentorship. Because to ask for help is to risk exposure. WFF finds out animals will be confiscated and killed, sometimes on site. And these citizens are acting with good intentions, but without support, this falls far short from what wildlife rehabilitation should and could be. It all started 12 years ago when WFF sent a series of letters to all wildlife rehabbers in the state, banning the rehabilitation of the state's native rabies vector species, and mandating the euthanasia. We had the first of many meetings with WFF soon after. During this first meeting, Director Sykes made his stance crystal clear. He said that wildlife rehabilitators are not needed in Alabama and referred to us as an unnecessary evil. The statement set the tone for what became a tense and adversarial and deeply discouraging relationship. In the years that followed, our group showed up again and again. We attended nearly 20 conservation advisory board meetings and private meetings with WFF employees. We spent countless hours on conference calls brainstorming solutions. We submitted proposals for new regulations. We asked for dialogue, partnership change. HSUS even offered to come into the state every year for a series of rabies vector education classes for rehabilitators. The state didn't even acknowledge that they said it, wouldn't even respond to that. WFF's only rehabilitation permitting contact stopped answering permit requests and inquiries. They claimed that there were simply no applicants. Over time,
more rehabilitators disappeared from the permitted list, not because they stopped caring, because they were targeted and sometimes bullied by WFF employees.
Put my specs on here. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. In 1960, Rachel Carson published a book called Silent Springs. And it has a poetic feel to it. It starts off, it was a spring without voices on the morning that once thrall of dawn voices of blue jays, doves, wrens, no scores of bird voices, there was now no sound. Only silence stretched over the fields, woods, and marsh. Now, Ms. Carson was referring to the dangers of pesticide use and environmental impacts due to lack of regulation. Thankfully, we have come a long way since then, but it does give us a friendly reminder. The decisions of today and tomorrow should focus on legacy and future generations that should not be reliant on personal gain. Hello, I'm Lee Stevens, State Director of USDA Wildlife Services Programs in Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, and in Alabama. Our program's mission is to provide federal expertise in resolving human and wildlife conflicts and protecting American agriculture, human health and safety, and natural resources from these conflicts. One large part of our program for safeguarding these valuable resources is the wildlife disease surveillance and implementing disease prevention measures. Particularly in Alabama, we test mammals for a variety of diseases. In the feral swine instance, we test for 2 rabies and brucellosis. 2 rabies can be transmissible to actually other wild animals. Both can be detrimental to the American pork industry. In the bird world, we test for high path, avian influenza, bird flu, and we are currently, which is currently making significant impacts to the poultry industry, as we all know, and raising up the egg prices. Interestingly enough, we found this highly contagious virus in over 200 bird species and over 40 mammal species today. As far as these prevention measures, we implement an oral rabies vaccination campaign involving 10 states using fixed-wing aircraft, helicopter, and ground crew. It is aimed and targeted to prevent the western spread of raccoon variant rabies. This is accomplished through the establishment of a vaccination barrier extending from Vermont to Alabama. We all know that rabies is 100% fatal. It claims about 59,000 deaths globally. The biggest battle that we fight and implement this program is the translocation of wildlife. When that happens, it not only costs taxpayers millions of dollars to try to minimize that outbreak risk, it could compromise the national rabies prevention effort that's been in place for 30 years.
You mentioned we're using aircraft to put out something.
Vaccines. Yes. Helicopter. Yeah.
County to county basis, or is that where you
The
have?
area is about 30 to 60 miles wide. It goes from Vermont all the way down and into Alabama. And during the fall time frame, we're flying grids throwing out vaccines on the eastern side of that barrier. The rabies barrier is invented. On the western side, it's not. So we're trying to prevent that western spread. Consequently, that barrier kind of divides Alabama. So if somebody takes an animal, raccoon rabies, a lot of times they're not showing signs. Then they start showing signs that are shedding. They might be healthy, and they translocate that critter across the actual barrier. It could have rabies, and it could, 30 years of doing this, it could impact what we've been doing.
Last is Jordan Giddens.
Chairman Crawford, Vice Chairman Hurst, Ranking Minority Member Jackson, and the rest of the members of this committee. It's always a pleasure to be here. I'm a former legislative staffer in both chambers of the legislature for both political parties. So I'm here today to talk about purely the policy aspects of this piece of legislation. Beyond working here for 10 plus years, I'm currently in the dissertation phase of my PhD in public administration and public policy at Tennessee State University, where my dissertation is focusing on human trafficking policy. All of that to say, I'm a policy expert. This policy in this proposed piece of legislation has not only been consulted with those who are tasked with regulating this proposed piece of legislation. They've not been consulted throughout the entire process. The proposed amendment does not offer any sort of regulatory measures or non-compliance measures. So for those that are doing this at home, and we have instances where there's non-compliance, there's no prescribed what is that penalty that's going to be ascribed to that person for non-compliance. The amendment does not go into that. Further, there's no further allocation of funds. This is going to cost the department that's doing these types of inspections more money. They're going to have to be going into homes to do this. As far as I know, I've not been looking at the budget, but I don't think they have an increased line item on the budget to facilitate these types of intense regulations that are going to be required to keep this bill going. So from a purely policy perspective, this is bad policy. It's not a good start. A good start would have been including those who are tasked with actually regulating and working with the rehabbers every single day. A good start would be getting the training and taking the tests and applying for those rehabilitation permits, which have existed. This is not a phenomenon just in here in Alabama with the decrease in rehabilitators. That is nationwide. There's 2 states that actually don't allow rehabilitation at all anymore. Nevada and Alaska only allows birds. So this is, like Chris, my boss, said, I'm at the Alabama Wildlife Center, but I'm here purely on the policy points of this bill. There are, I lost my train of thought, I'm so sorry. But this bill does not have any insight from those who are actually working day to day, regulating those, and those 7 rehabbers who are in the state. It's not a phenomenon just here in Alabama, it's nationwide.
Okay, we'll call Ian back up.
Can I make a couple of statements?
Sure.
I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding about what these rehabbers do, and the former licensed rehabbers and those that are not. There's just a coalition of rehabbers. They take them to that. They are prohibited from doing veterinary medicine. They take them to vets. If the injury is severe enough, they take them to the vets. If they and the vets, well, I didn't bring any vets here to testify, but there's a lot of vets that support this. Some of them, it's underground, they say, well, come to the back door after hours. And that's what this is for. They understand and treat them, and they return them, and they give them instruction. A lot of the rehabbers have a lot of training, and they have gone through that. They want to help other people that bring them to help them rehab the animals. And he made my point, there's not enough rehabbers. There's 7 across the state. You will have to take them across these barriers, okay, to get treatment or to get rehab. And we want to prevent that. We don't want to take them across the barriers. Sometimes there's county lines that you have to. And I want to make a distinction between the Alabama Wildlife Center. Okay, they do a good job. You do a good job in what you do. Okay, but there's not enough of them, and they get grants and stuff, and they're on the Oak Mountain State Park facility. They get in-kind use of the facilities of over $1/4. They're $990, over $1 million, right? You report on your 990?
That's not accurate.
That's not accurate. Well, it's almost $1 million.
Kind of that.
And y'all get paid, do you not?
We don't get paid by the state, and we don't.
We don't get paid by the state.
We're a private 501c3, and we're on our property.
Let's get your amendment on where we can talk about the deal.
I'd like to make that motion to adopt the.
There's a motion and a second. You got the names? Yes. All in favor say aye on the amendment. Aye. Opposed, no. Dan read it earlier, but we want to read it again. Want to read it again? Okay, so now we have the bill as amended on okay, then you'll turn your attention to the administration.
Thank you. But your amendment does not, testifies it does not do anything about them putting it back into what they are trying to do as it relates to facilitating the policy.
On the conservation?
Right.
Okay. No, it does not. There's no bite into on the Department of Conservation. And I would say otherwise, it does not put a burden on them other than that, and that's minimal. That's just a reporting, coming up with a plan for reporting. It won't cost the state anything. Well,
What are the people's reason for not permitting themselves getting permits to do?
because if they do, they would be forced to kill RSV species or rabies vaccine species. If an injured RV, and y'all correct me.
If they get permitted, they'll be forced to kill them.
Yes.
So without being permitted, they can treat them like they.
Once it's allowed, okay, and they can take them to vets. If they got rabies, the vets, it's in the vet's hand. He will take care of it.
Will they know that animal has rabies?
Not necessarily. They could be asymptomatic, yes. They may not know that it has rabies.
And see, they're around the children.
Yeah, but
Even I want to say this even the Good Samaritan took the man to the inn so he could get treatment.
Yeah, so they take them to the vet to get treated.
But you said it's not.
And there's this.
They say it's not enough sellers to vets to take it to them. Did I hear that?
Veterinarians are not permitted to treat rabies vector species.
They can't either.
So that is not the solution to this problem.
It's currently illegal.
I'm confused here because what I was trying to, why you can't take them to an injured animal to a veterinarian if you're not licensed to handle it and to provide for that injured bird or whatever animal it is. Why you can't take animal hospital? I mean, that's where they have hospitals.
Sir, they're not supposed to treat.
They can't treat a wild bird.
They're not supposed to treat them either.
It depends on the species, sir, which species veterinarians may intervene and provide initial triage and care to. Rabies vector species are not among those.
I've been told all wildlife is not allowed to be treated like that.
That is incorrect.
Yes, sir. I have a quick question. So, this bill for people who just go around looking for animals to help, or is this bill for just someone that kind of stumbles up on a hurt animal? So we're talking about two different things. Like we're talking about some people that they're like the go-to person in their community. So if something happens, and then you're talking about someone else that just stumbled on this situation. It seems like we're talking about two different things today. And I may be wrong, but like a regular person like me that don't go out looking for animals to help, if I stumble up on an animal, okay, I want to help, but I wouldn't see me being required to go get some type of license or something like that. But it sounds like some other people in here may need some type of license because they may be operating like almost like a little hospital in their community where, you know, I'm hearing people say they meet up on Saturdays and they're doing all these, they're kind of a little deeper into this thing than somebody that, you know, stumbled up on an animal to help. And I would also like to think that, you know, at some point common sense have to play into this. You know, if you have a bobcat that you're raising up, you know what I'm saying? Like, I would think that, you know, at some point common sense would come into it. So I'm a little confused with the bill a little bit. I'm trying to understand it, but it seems like we're talking about, even from listening to the public hearing, seems like we're talking to me about two different types of people.
Yes, you're exactly right. There are some people that don't want to take the time, and that's most people. Most people want to find it, take care of it, and they come upon it, they either do it in the car or whatever, and they want to take it to somebody that does know what they're doing. And if it needs veterinary care, they take it to the vet. And so, and then it gets whatever care it needs, and then they take it back to the rehabbers to take care of it long term till it heals. But there is a time limit on it of 6 months.
Is that the standard that was in the regulation, 6 months?
Oh, I'm supposed to find it. Is that? Yes.
And there's only like 5 rehabbers in the state of Alabama. 7, I'm sorry. I was off 6. And it's impossible to do
I just had it stated. I don't know if I have a question. I was just going to say that I know of a couple people myself who've had rehab animals. But there's no facility, close by. And if there was, I mean, it was an hour and a half. Or they got them to a place where there was I think a hawk, a friend of mine saw a hawk on the road, and she took them, and it was an hour and a half from Auburn. I mean, she probably wouldn't have done it by herself just because common sense starts playing in that she didn't have the knowledge. But you almost feel like that, like a good Samaritan, like if you stumble upon, these animals that you could go on, like if there should be some sort of support system that says the dangers for rehabbing some of these animals if they could carry rabies, that you would maybe look onto the Alabama Wildlife Center's webpage or the Department of Natural Resources Conservation something that would say on that. But you would be able, I just feel like there's so many people that do that and they don't realize it's necessary.
Travis, I think you're next.
Yeah, that's a comment of being one of the guys raised on the farm, I that I wish all of them for sure, of a young rabbit nest and different is what you say, here I am by myself, I make this, I work, actually, got one kid with me. And, whatever they heard that you do, and, you respond, that's what we can do to try to get that dive with somehow along that process. One of the things someone that's being held out just offer, trying to make that the first thing asked about there is indeed, it seems like our department should be doing what it can do, maybe close to facilitate, that we have the proper things, the proper area that folks can make sure that happens. Because sometimes when these guys watch something like the Texas Wild Game show and stuff like that, and oftentimes you find somebody with an animal here, they call it the Department of Conservation, come and rescue the animal and take it to the rehab facility. But we don't have that because that seems like it's something that that department should be working on putting in place for that. But right now, I vote to give a favorable.
Okay, we got another question. Yes, my question is for the bill sponsor, Representative Harrison. It seems as though the two groups both have the same purpose. They want to help wildlife, especially those who have been injured. Have you tried to get the parties in one room and try to work out something where we can facilitate the conservation of wildlife without exposing or maybe without condemning the rehabbers who are trying to do helpful things like the Good Samaritan deal? But I would love to see y'all work something out where we can get this to where we can help injured wildlife.
There could be. As the lady said, there's been over 20 meetings with it over the last 10 years. And they've actually gone to conservation and tried to modify things. And this is where we are. And so they've had 12 years since 2013. And, this is the state that we have. And I know they say that the sky will fall and people will die, but I do not see the great risk that they see.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
there was one quote made during the testimony of Representative Harrison. A high-ranking state official referred to rehabbers as, quote, an unnecessary evil.
Yes.
I think I copied that down wrong, right, but an unnecessary evil. And we're at a point where there are only 6 or 7 rehab centers in the state, which I hope isn't reflective of the department's view on rehabs. But that's, you know, that was, that kind of stood out to me, but it's very insufficient to deal with our ailing and injured wildlife, I would think, to have that few rehab centers.
I met with conservation 10 days ago or something, 13 weeks ago, and I asked them about that, and they said that well, that was taken out of context, and I would be willing to give them time to put that in context. They did say it happened, and they said that was unfortunate, sent the wrong message, but it was taken out of context, but they didn't explain what the context was.
Thank you.
Currently, it's south, you know, strike a deer or something, but we look on all, I'm only taking home and we have to see if what happens if I do that and don't get permission? What happens?
That would be up to, well, right, all you have to do is to call them, or set up, follow the procedure that they will set up.
See, I knew a man that's what they did. They released injured animals, and my sister had a raccoon, and I don't know all that shit out there. He lived down the street, and he raked, actually, we have those, but this was 25 years ago. But right now, what would happen if y'all caught me with one? What's the negative outcome for me if y'all catch me rehabbing an animal?
What I can tell you is we don't arrest them.
No, you have the
Thank you.
you have the authority to.
We have the authority, sir. You cannot possess game animals without some sort of permit to set them. So there is a permit system that
I'm sure you're. I didn't work in this my life. I was faithful.
I think we got somebody over here who said they were arrested.
She was arrested, charged with discount.
One other question.
Mr. Chairman, we'll put a second on this motion on it.
Hey, one question as we go here. Is there any reason why you have not gotten your permit, your rehab?
You talking to me?
Any of all of you don't have.
It is very difficult to get your permit to be a rehabilitator. And I'm sorry I was late. Let me tell you this, because I left my truck and my brake down, but the rail, no, but I broke down. I'm trying to get here. Okay, I've been shot. And security texted my phone and said, they're going to tow my dog, my boat, my brake, my boat. I'm on the way to the lake house after this, but it's almost impossible to get a rehabilitation life in the state of Alabama. You cannot pick up an injured squirrel and take it in your home without the field. I can't even post it on Facebook. I got 10 million followers. That's not even posted on Facebook because you can't realize this is humane, okay? I gotta even say go back to vote, but thank you for giving me a minute. But this, look, I grew up with a garden and meat on the table, and all my family, all my family went to hunt after Thanksgiving. They went home to the garden every night. But my mother was at home, and she was nourishing whatever needed nourished. We raised rabbits with kittens, and we raised, and it's sad. It's really sad. Thank y'all for your time. I gotta go save my new bass boat. I'm going to the lake house, and I'm glad I got to save it. Okay? Thank you. I respect y'all, and I'm sorry for being late, but I was overheated. Whatever, Andy. Anyway, thank you, guys.
Excuse me, he will address you.
Any other questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. No. Ayes have it.
Yes, sir.
Now we're on
This